Today is the Gimel Tammuz. Gimel Tammuz is a day when in Jewish history, the day when the sun set in Yeshua, the story in Yeshua, God made the sun, not set, stop. And so that was the first time in Jewish history when the day Gimel Tammuz was prominent. Later, years later, in 1927, this day, Gimel Tammuz, the previous Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, the Rebbe's father-in-law, he was told on Gimel Tammuz that his life would be spared. He was taken to prison on Tesvav Sivan, 1927, and it was he was due for a death sentence. And on Gimel Tammuz, they, through Hashem's intervention, of course, and people's work, hard work, the Rebbe was spared, his life was spared. Now, there were Chassidim of the Frierdiker Rebbe, my wife's grandfather, one of them, Reb Zalman Serebransky, Reb Mendel Futterfass, those were the Bacharim, or Junge Light. They were, they were the foot soldiers of the Frierdiker Rebbe. They weren't really students of the Rashab. They were students of the Frierdiker Rebbe. And they did not say Tachnun. I don't know if all of them, but Reb Zalman, and I would imagine the others, didn't say Tachnun on Gimel Tammuz, because to them, their Rebbe's life was spared. It was so it was real Geula, not imaginary. And to them, they would fabrein on Gimel Tammuz. We celebrate Yud Beis Tammuz and Yud Gimel Tammuz. We don't say Tachnun Minik Chabad, because that's ultimately when the Rebbe left. Not only was his life spared Gimel, but he was freed from his jail sentence. And that
the whole Rebbe today in Shul, there was a whole thing. If to say some Chabad said to say Tachnun, some Chabad said not.
Okay. Let me run the Fabrengen, because we got to keep it focused. What they do in shuls is a lot of mishagas. They can do whatever they want. They can say they're a chicken, put on their pants backwards. It's no problem. But I'm sharing with you tradition, Messiah. Okay? That's it. Take it or leave it. Whoever wants could take it. Whoever wants to make up their new creative Judaism or Chabad, it's a free world. The Rebbe, I saw with my own eyes on Yud Shvat, that was the day when his father-in-law passed away. As soon as the Chazan finished Shmon Esrei, he was about to start Tachnun, and Rabbi Groner had to find the Chosin, and he quickly put him next to the Amud, so that the Chazan, when the Chazan started to say Kaddish, the Rebbe right away looked very serious, like, what's going on here? Why are you saying Kaddish if it's a yahrzeit? Minik Chabad, not like in many other Hasidic communities, we say Tachnun on a yahrzeit. But because there was a Chosin, so the halacha says you don't say Tachnun. But if there wasn't a Chosin, Tachnun said. So that's the answer today. Now, if you're a Chosin of the Frierdiker Rebbe, like Reb Zalman and Reb Mendel, and they had Simcha, Begashmis, that their Rebbe was spared, halacha provides that they can not say Tachnun. But as a minik kloli, this is not minik Chabad. And anyone says otherwise is a liar, an outright liar, and he's misleading. I don't care if he's a shliach. I don't care if he's a rav. He's misleading a congregation. So let's go on, but I'm making it very clear. So on this day in 27, on this day was the Frierdiker Rebbe's life was spared. Then in our generation, 29 years ago to the day, today was the Rebbe's Histalkus. We don't say, in Lubavitch, we don't use the word petira about a tzaddik. A regular person, you say he's petita, he's passing. For a tzaddik in Chabad, we use Histalkus because the Rebbe used that word for the Frierdiker Rebbe in the Maimer Bosiligani, which you've all learned, I'm sure. And you'll see the word Histalkus. And Histalkus, according to this Maimer, means that there's an overwhelming revelation from what's called Eiraseinu Kol Almin. In other words, there is great energy that comes into the world on the Yom Hilula of a tzaddik, and it's based on the Zohar HaKodesh, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. It's not a chiddush of the Rebbe, it's a Zohar. Again, if you don't believe the Zohar, you don't believe the Zohar, but the Zohar says that the day of Lag BaOmer is the Yom Hilula. And what does the word Hilula mean? Festive. It's a festive day. It's a yard site. One second. It's a yard site with all the trimmings of a yard site, Kaddish, Mishnayos, those that learn a Masechta, serious reflection, giving tzedakah, everything else. But together with that, it's called the Hilula because the tzaddik, the Zohar HaKodesh says, Reb Shimon, every yard site goes to a much higher level. Yes, he will.
So is it appropriate to use the term Hilula to describe Gimel Tammuz?
Yes.
The Hilula of the Rebbe? Okay.
Absolutely. Just as the Rebbe used it for his father-in-law, and as the Zohar HaKodesh uses it for Reb Shimon, it's not a Chabad thing. It's a Zohar. Now, again, most people don't use the word Hilula, let's say, on the day of the yard site of Reb Nachman or another tzaddik. I haven't heard them. I'm not saying they never use it, but it's not frequent. But the Rebbe.
That's why I asked the question.
Right. But the Rebbe really put a lot of emphasis on this word Yom Hilula to change the framework. But Yoini, that doesn't mean that you don't again say Tachnun and say Kaddish and everything else. It's two separate in Yonim. Yes, Yoini, what do you want to ask?
So my question is, I know on the Alter Rebbe's yard site, they say Tachnun, right? All Chabad Chasim say on the Alter Rebbe, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to the Rebbe, so what in the essence? No. Because of what you just mentioned, because of what happened with the Frierdiker Rebbe being saved. Then those Hasidim wouldn't say...
Right, those Hasidim. I'm not from that generation, and I said, I and my friends and every Lubavitcher shul said Tachnun, Gimel Tammuz, while the Rebbe was alive. We didn't experience that experience, and to kind of make believe. Again, now, I'm not saying if someone today feels Gimel Tammuz because the Frierdiker Rebbe's life was spared and really feels B'simcha, that's the gather, the p'tur of Tachnun, okay, but you got to be real with yourself. And I say this because Rabbi Michal Zelikson, who wrote tremendous amount of commentary on the Hayoim Yoim, so he asked the Rebbe about Gimel Tammuz. He asked the Rebbe, before the Rebbe passed away on Gimel Tammuz, he asked him, should we not say Tachnun on Gimel Tammuz because of the Frierdiker Rebbe, like you asked me now, Yoini, and Chayelu? And the Rebbe answered him. The Rebbe said, Tolui behergish. It's up to the feeling of the individual. If he feels that great simcha, he's exempt from Tachnun if he doesn't want to say Tachnun. If he doesn't feel that connection, special connection. He says, but practically, I could tell you, the Rebbe didn't play games. I saw him, he said Tachnun always, and he had to have a chassan there. Now, if the Lubavitcher Rebbe didn't feel Chayelu, if he was going to say Tachnun, but if a chassid feels that's the Baal Shem Tov's Yom Haledes, the Alter Rebbe's Yom Haledes, and he feels elated, okay. And that's the answer. What you're referring to are those the group of Meshichistin who turned Gimel Tammuz into a Yom HaGeula because of whatever, because the sun Some stopped, whatever. And what I said before is that there's no source for that. They made it up. They decided, It's like someone comes over to me shul last night in Shomer Shabbos. I was there for mincha, and someone who is dressed in the Hasidic garb, but he's pretty much a Chabadnik, but he's dressed with the Polish Hasidic garb, and he comes over to me, and he's a nice guy. We know each other. He whispers. He says, "Good Yom Tov." So I said to him, and I said it out loud, and then I apologized. I said, "What Good Yom Tov are you referring to?" He says, Gimel Tammuz. I said, I never heard Gimel Tammuz being a Yom Tov. I know that it's a Yom Hilula. And I never heard my teachers say Good Yom Tov on a yahrzeit. Yud Beis Tammuz, we say Good Yom Tov. You could say Good Yom Tov. Why? Because it's a Hasidic festival of redemption. But yahrzeit is a yahrzeit. And he says, you're right, and he was getting carried away. He's not a Mashiachist. But you know what I'm saying? Just like you're sharing, Yaini, what you heard in shul and all that. It's like when groups take over, and especially if they're loud, it causes confusion, it causes chaos, and one person does this or that. I'm telling you what I saw myself and witnessed myself and lived myself for many, many years. Anyway, I want to go on. So today we talk about the Rebbe being a leader for the Yiddish people, for the Jewish people. But it's not just in the past. In other words, normally on a yahrzeit, on a Yom Hilula of a tzaddik, you talk about his past. The tzaddik is no longer here. And many times a new tzaddik replaces the old tzaddik. A new Rebbe replaces the old Rebbe. But Mela, the old Rebbe, you make a Suda, and once a year you kind of identify and you think about, you go to the caver if it's available. But in Lubavitch, in Chabad, that's why I just sent you onto the group what I received from last night at the Ohel. Thousands of people, and I saw their, I guess shluchim with people, with not Lubavitchers. And I was thinking about it, that here you have a tzaddik, a Rebbe, who passed away 29 years ago, and you have 100-fold more people coming to the Ohel, coming to 770, coming to New York, meeting in all kinds of shuls all over the world than when he was alive. When the Rebbe was alive, especially when I was growing up in the 70s, 60s, and 70s, and even in the 80s, it was all, every 10 years, it grew a little more, and this was true for all communities. But here, a phenomenon happened it's really a phenomenon, and as a historian, it's a true phenomenon. It's not, it's not like a group, a Lubavitch, Chabad. They decided this is as we say in good English, in the bank. It's a fact. It's a fact that you can't deny. So what happened over here? Why is this happening? Why is it happening? And it's not just because of the birth rates, as some people say. Well, every community is growing. The Orthodox community is growing. The Hasidic community is growing. The Litvak community is growing. And therefore, you have more people. Well, you take a look, let's say, at Satmar. I'm just using them as an example. They have a tremendous amount of Hasidim. And the families are growing by leaps and bounds. But no one talks about Rabbi Yoel Satmar, Rabbi Yoel Teitelbaum, who had a stroke in 68 and passed away in 79, as the active current Satmar Rebbe. In fact, he is almost not known to the new generation. And in Lubavitch and Chabad, the new generation knows all about the Rebbe. And it's not just you're going to say, well, Satmar doesn't use videos. and technology, at least that's what they say. They do it for their business, of course, and we won't go there. But Chabad embraces that. If you embrace technology and every day you're getting 65 videos on your phone, it's going to be a continuation. And by the way, they asked Chaim Potak, who wasn't exactly a Hasidic Jew, okay? Ted Koppel of Nightline asked him, and I met Ted Koppel, and interviewed Chaim Potak, so I'm telling you firsthand. So Koppel asks him, what do you think is going to be with Chabad after the Rebbe passes on? So he says, Chabad will continue because they have a VCR accessible Rebbe. In those days, we still used the VCR. It's a great line. It's a great line. And it's a true line. But that's not the answer. Because if there isn't something behind the videos of emes, it fades out. It dissipates. I look around here, I'm ready, from the older Hasidim, you could say here in Borough Park for sure. My beard's already almost all white, if not, and I look around at amazing things, these guys you wouldn't know they're Lubavitch. They're giving out this morning tikkun, mashke, and l'chaim in the Borough Park shuls. They're putting down the table and they write for the neshama of the Rebbe's name, Ben Reb Levi Yitzchak. And they leave. So one person came over to me, said, since you daven in the morning in a different shul, if you're there, you could kind of, say it's come say l'chaim, it's the Rebbe's yard site. Well, they didn't bring it, but I still mentioned, and I was given aliyah, and people, in other words, the presence of a Lubavitcher that's what we call an ostentatious Lubavitcher like myself, so you can't help but know that today's Gimel Tammuz. You know what I'm saying? But the question here is, this is all chitzonius. What I just said is all superficial. What is behind the video? What is behind the ostentatious Lubavitcher? The answer is that this particular tzaddik, although he physically passed away, Gimel Tammuz, the message that he left Klal Yisrael, not just Lubavitch, Chabad, but Klal Yisrael, is one that will be till Mashiach comes, and maybe even after Mashiach comes. I shouldn't say maybe, surely, but for sure till Mashiach comes. Why? Because his message was to add another mitzvah, bring another Jew back to Yiddishkeit, give him that opportunity, and know that Mashiach is a reality. No, what reality is it if we're still in Golus? If yesterday or the day before, 4 Yidden were never killed in Eli by the eatery. I mean, what Mashiach is that? Could you tell me? What Mashiach is that? So the question's a good one, and it's pain, and we have this situation. So the Rebbe addressed that too, not directly on the Eli situation, but he asked, the Rebbe said in 1982 in this Farbrengen of Yud Shvat, he said, people think it's 32 years, 1982 was 32 years from when the previous Rebbe passed away in 1950. And I think Avi told me once that he grew up in Crown Heights, right, Avi? Am I right? Yeah. So Avi's a Crown Heights boy. So 32 years, the Rebbe says, you would think that the connection, it's 32 years from his passing, and every year he passes away longer and more. And the Rebbe said just the opposite. Because if Zarei B'chayim, Chazal say this, if the children are alive, Afhu B'chayim, he's also alive. And the Rebbe said in 1982, by us doing what the previous Rebbe suggested we do and wanted us to do for Yiddishkeit and for Torah and for Yidden and for people, that he's more alive. That means he's 32 years closer to us, not 32 years further from us. So here the argument is, but I don't see it, and I don't hear him. So let me tell you a little secret, my friends. And I talk to everyone who will watch the video, who watches the Fabrengens. If you think that when you saw the Lubavitcher Rebbe and you heard him at a Fabrengen in 770, in 1964, 1956, or 1984, or 1990, if you think that you really knew him and you really got in and you really were, you didn't. You didn't. He shared Torah. He even had yechidus with people. But it's all a spiritual experience. And what I'm getting at, and this is a very important part of this Fabrengen, is that Ruchnius is the essence of a tzaddik. And the Alter Rebbe writes this in the Geras HaKodesh, Chav Zayin and Chav Ches, which we think about and learn on a Yom Hilula. The Alter Rebbe writes there, Yoini, that a tzaddik is not about more gashmias and more meat and more material matter. A tzaddik is ruchnius, ava and yira, love and fear of God. And that, as the tzaddik goes higher in Shomayim, he is more accessible because ruchnius is the call of the hour. So what I'm saying is that even when the Rebbe was alive, it was about Ruchnius. Why did a person, listen to this, I'll tell you a story. It's a Fabrengen would tell stories. In the 1960s, we lived in a neighborhood called East Flatbush. Avi, I'm sure, remembers that it was a border to Crown Heights. It's to the left of 770 is Bedford-Stuyvesant. And after that is Williamsburg. To the right, our neighborhood's called East Flatbush, East New York, Brownsville, okay? Brownsville used to be in the 20s and 30s. It was called Yerushalayim of America. There were hundreds of Shtiblach. Chaim Berlin was there, Tarvadas was in Williamsburg. It was all kinds of Chassidish, Litvish, all kinds of... East Flatbush became a Jew, and I grew up in East Flatbush in the 60s. So the neighborhood was changing after the 1964 riots, as it was in Chicago and Los Angeles. You know, neighborhoods were changing. There was a lot of issues. And my parents had yechidus with the Rebbe for my father's Yom Haledos, which is, August Elul. And in middle of the yechidus, which was for my father, right? It was his birthday yechidus. The Rebbe turns to my mother and he says, "Wo lernt ihr Meidale or Tochterl? Where does your daughter study?" Now, my sister is 1 year younger, and she must have been 5, 6 years old. So my mother said, just the middle of the yechidus, my mother says she learns in a play group. And it wasn't, I don't think it was a Jewish play group, but a little play group, on the block, around the block. So the Rebbe says, sie darf lernen, she needs to learn in Beis Rivka. Beis Rivka is the Chabad girls' school. So my mother said that she's like a little child, to travel, and the Rebbe. Then she says to the Rebbe, and we don't have money to pay for tuition. And then she says the third thing, that my sister, I guess, from travel, sometimes going in a car, she vomited. So my mother was concerned that she would be vomiting if she had to go in a bus or a car to school. Because Beis Rivka was on Church Avenue, and we lived in East Flatbush, so it was 20 minutes away. She needed transportation. And the Rebbe said, the Rebbe did not address each of the points. The Rebbe said, speak to the Anhola, to the administration, tell them all of your reasons why it's difficult, and they will find a solution. But she belongs in Beis Rivka. The next morning, Rabbi Kunen's brother, Rabbi Pinchas Kunen, she have a lichtig in Gan Eden, He came with his car to my door to pick up my sister. And the next morning, every morning. And tuition wasn't an issue. Whatever my father could pay, they accepted. And my sister went to Beis Nifke and became a Lubavitcher mother, a Lubavitcher girl and mother. And Baruch Hashem, has grandchildren, great-grandchildren. That's Ruchnius. Why is it Ruchnius? You're telling the Rebbe 3 excuses why a 5-6-year-old little girl should be in a preschool around the block, and Lubavitcher Rebbe completely disregards it and says, listen, you're a Lubavitcher, you're married to a Lubavitcher, you're raising a Lubavitcher home. Your daughter belongs in a Lubavitcher school. Now, do you think everyone listened? The answer is no. I'm not going to tell you that every person that went into Yechidus and that the Rebbe would say something like that, or let's say the Rebbe told Rebbe wasn't for going to college, and parents, especially from the old country who came over, wanted their kids to go, their sons and daughters go to college, and they would argue with the Rebbe in Yechidus. And I know some. I don't want to mention names, and you know some of the names that I know. Rabbis today who are in the 70s, very bright, and they were really fit for college because they were frum. They were really frum. They wouldn't fry out in college. But the Rebbe wouldn't accept it, and he would argue with them. Did everyone listen? No. But what's the discussion here? It's not, what I'm saying is, this is the point I'm getting at, it's about Ruchnius. If in Chabad, we don't look at a Rebbe, he gives you a blessing, maybe he'll give you a check if you need help, and he'll give you a bracha for bar mitzvah, bas mitzvah, marriage, and it's a whole different Rebbe in Chabad. It's about Ruchnius. The brachas are there too, but it's about spirituality. So that's why even 29 years later, after Gimel Tammuz, the focus in Chabad of a Rebbe is Ruchnius, so the Ruchnius continues. It would be nicer to hear and see him. Well, so send an email to God. If you don't like email, try FedEx or Twitter. You decide how you want to communicate with Hashem. But that's what Hashem did, and Hashem knows everything, and that's exactly what he wanted. So obviously, it continues. Now let's go to another argument. So why Dafka the Rebbe? Besides Reb Nachman, why another tzaddik? Not for Lubavitcher. And the answer is, Einoch Hanami. And I told you the story when I came one Purim, living here in Borough Park, to someone who I was studying the Arizal with him, and he invited me, and I came to say L'chaim Purim, and I see the table is set, in the middle of the day, not at the end. Table is set, and there's a chair, and there's candles lit. So I said, it looked like a very holy place, and no one was sitting there. People were sitting on the sides. I said, who's that for? He said, that's for the Zidichayva Rebbe. I said, which Zidichayva Rebbe? I said, the one that passed away 150, 200 years ago? He said, yeah. I said, what does that mean? He says, he's my Rebbe. I said, really? How's he your Rebbe? I learned his Sfarim, and I consider him my Rebbe. This wasn't a Lubavitcher. This wasn't a Chabad Chassid. This was a Jew, a real serious Jew, and kol hakavod. So the answer is, if someone has a feeling for another tzaddik, regardless of how long he lived, no problem. But what we have with this Lubavitcher Rebbe, this last Lubavitcher Rebbe, the 7th Rebbe, is that he took a concern for every Jew. And that's how he makes him different than other Rebbes. His interest was to reach every Jew all over. So he sent the shluchim, he sent business people. He didn't suffice with his own insular community. He said, we are not complete as a community until every Yid experiences Torah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And for that matter, even non-Jews. And he introduced the idea of the 7 mitzvahs as a reality, not the 7 Noachide mitzvahs that are in a book written by Chaim Dalfin or Lichtenstein, or in the Rambam. No. Somehow we have to go out and share the message of the 7 mitzvahs. That the Rebbe spoke publicly once in the 1980s, 83, 84, 85, I forget. So when you talk about this particular tzaddik, and today is his Yom Elula, today is the day that when you write a pidyon, when you say a kapitel Tillim, when you learn a maimer or a sicha, or you come to a fabrengen, which we're doing, the connection is active. The connection is active. So therefore, can I tell you that I would love to hear the Rebbe live and not old videos? Videos are nice, but they're old. What do we say? Reruns, right? Reruns. Reruns. For me, it's reruns. For you guys, maybe it's not. But for me, it's reruns.
Well,
What?
Prequels and sequels.
Yeah. But that's... Since it's not for the Jewish world, and I can tell you it's not, because I get communication from many non-Lubavitchers, and for them it's new, and they're amazed, and look just on the stories, a baker in Muncie or Lakewood, a Chassidish guy, he tells a story why he goes to the oil, like what kesher did he have? Somehow he has a kesher, So would I like to have new Chassidus? Would I like to have a Rebbe who's darshaning Shabbos, having a Tish, having a Fabrengen, saying Chassidus, giving direction today? Yeah, but guess what? That's not what Hashem wants right now for this Lubavitcher Rebbe. That's it. So you could either fight it and become a loser and be bitter, or you can understand that what he said about his father-in-law is real to him, which is, you have to stand on your own feet. I gave you 42 years. Now take all of this information and make it happen. And I could say that Lubavitch has done that, not just through videos and not just through shluchim, but through an awareness. And it's not about him. You see, another issue that people get stuck at is the focus is on the Rebbe, worshiping the Rebbe, worshiping a human. It's not about worshiping a human. It's about worshiping HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It happens to be that this tzaddik, through his writings and teachings, makes it accessible to so many people because of the style of teaching and activities that he did, beginning with sending shluchim to now probably 5,000, 6,000 shluchim worldwide. Now someone will say, but I want a living Rebbe. Well, if you want a living Rebbe, choose yourself a Rebbe. Find a Rebbe. No problem. If you're a person that needs to have a living Rebbe to see and hear, find yourself a Rebbe. No problem. But if you're a person who's able to see the ruchnius within this tzaddik as it continues today, it's what Hashem wants. And it continues. So if there were a stoppage in the work, and we would see that people coming to the oil or to 770 or to a Chabad house or to a Chabad shul, it's not happening. Okay, then you could say, hey, wait, there's a mistake over here. This is finished and it's not working. But it's otherwise. The proof is in the pudding. Just ask people who go to the oil, who go to 770, who continue. I just heard a wild story. This is not with the Rebbe, with a chassid of his. So a fellow in Winnipeg, a Lubavitcher, had 4 girls. To fly to Winnipeg, even from Canada, is expensive. From New York, I think it's $1,000, even though it's just a 3-hour flight, but there's no direct flight. There used to be years ago when Winnipeg was a hub for for one of the airlines, but it stopped. They moved the fleet over to Toronto, to Montreal, and to Calgary, I think. Anyway, it was expensive. He had 4 boys. He had 4 boys. So he always brought a Lubavitcher Mayel from Montreal, and he paid his ticket. And he never told him what he cost, The 4th boy, the Mayel, was in the house the night before. He came early, whatever. And he noticed on the table the airline receipt for how much it cost. And he said, "What? You spent so much money to bring me here from Montreal to Winnipeg? I give you a bracha that from here on, you should only have girls. You shouldn't have to have..." And he looks aghast. He says, "But a boy," he says, "first of all, you have 4 boys, so it's time for girls. Second of all, he says, Bas Talmud Chacham." The Gemara says, girls, Bas Talmud Chacham. And you'll have son-in-laws. And guess what? As long as that Moel, Rabbi Herschel Zeitlin was his name, was alive, he had 4 more children, girls. And as soon as Rabbi Zeitlin passed away, he had, I think, 1 or 2 more boys. So, Chevra, Ruchni is...
He was at Zeitlin from Montreal?
Yes.
Okay.
Probably related to you. So, yeah. What I'm saying is, we have to get used to Ruchnius. I was thinking about our Shir, and I was thinking, because I really want you to understand the Tanya, and I'm saying sometimes the ideas are so lofty and so, am I explaining it, well enough down to earth where you can work with it? Ruchnius, we have to train ourselves. You guys are college educated. You were taught in a Western way of thinking. You're a different place now in your lives. Every one of you, and everyone that's especially gone to Yisrael. You have to make that paradigm shift in the mind. You have to start thinking like, I don't mean just Torah thinking, but, not the Western way of thinking. And what's the difference? The difference is that Ruchnius is true and the Iker. So I don't mean that Ruchnius is true and Iker to put on tefillin and keep the Torah. Of course. I mean the way of thinking that a tzaddik says something is stronger and better and more real than what Einstein said, and what Galileo said, and what Freud said. They have 75 titles after their name, and they went to Harvard and Columbia and Oxford, and on and on and on. Very, very nice and very important. And they need to be respected for that. But at the same time, if a tzaddik and a Rebbe tells you, and he's told people who came to him, the doctor told me to operate, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe says, not yet. So who are you going to listen to? Who are you going to listen to? So the Western way of thinking is the doctor. Lubavitcher Rebbe, God bless you, and you're a great man, but you're not a doctor, and I'm a doctor. And I'm telling you that they need to have an operation. The Chassid says, if a tzaddik, not Tom, Dick, and Harry, if a tzaddik says and sees, and you believe that they see the future, they see what's important, they see how you will continue living, the Chassid follows the Rebbe, a Rebbe, and not the doctor. Now, it happens to be the Rebbe was very supportive of doctors, and he always, etc., etc. But there were cases where he would even say, are you sure the doctor said that? Or go back to the doctor and check again, and they rechecked. There's such stories. But what this all points to is this one nekuda. And this is the nekuda of this Farbrengen. That since it's Gimel Tammuz, 29 years, and it begins the 30th year, one can say, what are we doing here? We don't have, if we had a living Rebbe and we can hear and see him, so we celebrate together with him. Just like when he celebrated the yahrzeit of the previous Rebbe, he spoke in 770. So you came to the Rebbe in 770, or you heard him in Ramat Bet Shemesh on a hookup, and there was a koil, a voice of a tzaddik who you knew about or visited or learned from and all that. But here it's not that way. So the answer is, you have to connect to your ruchnius. You really. And this is for all of Torah, to connect to ruchnius. And this is, Isser was saying yesterday, what's the tachlis? Which is interesting. Isser says, he was a philosophy major in college, yet he has this, what's the tachlis? Which is interesting, because usually a philosophy major should be philosophical and flutin' and tootin' in philosophy, and who cares about what the tachlis is? But obviously, Isser's neshama is such a neshama that although there's an interest in philosophy, he has to know what's the bottom line, tachlis, right? So the same thing here. What's the tachlis? What's the tachlis over here? Gimel Tammuz, 29 years later, when the Rebbe you don't feel and see him. And the answer is, it behooves you to connect to Ruchnius. If you want. If you don't want, don't. Because it's about Ruchnius. It's really about Ruchnius. How many times in my life, Chevra, did I have personal conversation with the Rebbe? Not many. I had some correspondence, but also not a lot. And people who were younger than me had less conversation, if any, and even my own friends, I probably had more correspondence with the Rebbe than they did. So, but we were Chassidim, we were his Chassidim. I went on his shlichus because that's what he wanted. In my high school yearbook, it says next to everyone, their picture, next to Chaim Dalfin, what will Chaim Dalfin want, and what it will be? A Chabad house. 1978, when I graduated high school, that's what they wrote. And because they saw that I was a good learner, I was a great student and everything else, but they want, my she'ifa, what was my strebel, what's the word in English for she'ifa, my drive. My drive was to have a Chabad house, which Baruch Hashem I had in 1984. My wife and I went out on the Rebbe Shlichus to Marin County. So, did the Rebbe call me in and give me long direction what I should do in Marin County? Did the Rebbe know that there are Jews there with ponytails raising pigs from New York and telling the rabbi they know what Judaism is better? Do you think the Rebbe, did he know that Marin County is the hot tub capital of the United States, smoking dope in the hot tub as it was depicted in that documentary? He just says, hey, Dalfin, go out there, use your brains, become a mensch, you learn Torah, you learn Chassidus, you were by Fabrengens, you could do it. Just go out there. And that was the attitude that the Rebbe built by his young Chassidim, the Bocharim, and they go out, and this is true till today, they go out with the biggest chutzpah. The biggest chutzpah. Like they own Marin County. Hey, little schnook, you're 23 years old, you just came out of your diapers. And you are all of a sudden the Chabad house rabbi, the leader. The answer is, I'm going with the koyach of a tzaddik. And it's like the kettle is hot because the fire makes it hot. And it's as though the fire is still burning, is still on, and causing the kettle to be hotter and hotter each time, and each year it gets hotter. And when you feel you're dry and you're stale, you recharge your batteries. And we used to come back once or twice a year to Crown Heights to 770. Today, one comes to 770, one comes to the oil, one comes to Chassidim, to Fabreng. What you did last night, some of you who attended this Fabrengen, or Pharaoh brought this, that's exactly the way it should be, and more often. And that's what the Tzemach Tzedek said. Before the Tzemach Tzedek passed away, Hillel, he was sick from 1861 till he passed away in 1866. He wasn't well. And they Chassidim felt it's just a matter of time. So they said to the Rebbe, what's going to be after your passing? Now, please understand, Tzemach Tzedek had 7 sons. He had 7, one passed away, right? What do you mean what's going to be? The children are going to take over. But you have to understand that the Chassidim that Tzemach Tzedek was probably coming from, most of them coming from a previous generation, or many of them, even those that became his Chassidim identified with him. What do they have to do with the kids? They're nice kids, holy kids, but... And Tzemach Tzedek said, if Chassidim will stay together, it will continue. And that's the message for us. And that goes to what Tzioini began with the different groups and Tachnun. Got to stay together. You don't want to say Tachnun, no problem. But don't make divisiveness. And if there's a Rav in a shul, it's the Rav's responsibility to say what should be in the shul. You want to go into another room and make your own minyan, and the Rav gives you permission, no problem. You want to go to another shul, go to another shul. In other words, there has to be cooperation, and there can be cooperation. And I've seen it, and I've lived it till today. And Baruch Hashem, I could say that I succeeded. In other words, when you have extremists, the extremists will they won't accept you unless you're an extreme like them. But the average person who's not an extremist will find commonality and peacefulness and work together. And that's a message for us. You come into a shul, Moshe and I have discussed it, and there are people who are saying Yechi Adonenu and all that, right? Don't scream and put them down. Just go on, do what you have to do. If you don't say it, no problem. Kaddish finishes, you go out of the shul. And if someone comes to you and say, how can you leave the shul? You didn't say Yechi with us. Well, you say, that's not I don't do that. Whatever. You want to do it. And you just continue. There's a way of, are you going to have once in a while a hothead, a vigilante? Yes, you will. Because that's the way the world works. But by and large, it's not that way. This morning, I said in the shul, the Kaddish, the Rabbanan after Mishnayos. The Chaver in shul don't do that. And as soon as Aleinu is over and take the tefillin off, they run out of shul. I said to them, Chaver, one moment, I have to say a Kaddish. Everyone stayed. You know why? Because they respect me. Not me. Because they respect me. And that's why they stopped and they waited for Kaddish. They didn't say, hey, it's not our minig. Because, and if you're a respectable person, as a person, not as a Rav, a rabbi, a shliach, as a person, you will be able to accomplish so much. So Rabbi Chaim Dalfin comes in Simchas Torah to Magen Avram on La Brea and Oakwood in Los Angeles. You probably know some of that area, right? And it's a Hungarian shul. It's like a Satmar shul. And they start singing, Oir Zoru ala tzadik ule yishrei leiv simcha. Now that's a traditional song that's sang for a tzaddik. When a tzaddik would come into a shul, this was still in Europe, in Hungary, in Poland. And Rabbi Reichik, this, this old Lubavitcher with his, right? He looks half like he's already in Olam Ha'emes, hunched over. And because they know that this man is a holy man, he's a real holy person. So he says to them, he didn't say this, I'm paraphrasing, you really believe I'm a tzaddik? You really believe I'm holy? Then I would like you to say Tehillim after davening. He said, I never wanted to mention it because it's not my shul, it's not your custom, but if you're really giving me the honor of singing Or Zerlu Ala Tzaddik, so then I'm asking you to say Tehillim after davening. And they did. How long it lasted, I don't know. But I'm just saying, so the same is with the issues, Yoini, that you identified at the very beginning of the Farbrengen. We need to find a way to work together. And this is so important today, because one of the things that the youth in all communities, you mentioned the other day, I think Yoini or someone else mentioned the issues in Bet Shemesh with the youth and all that. I don't know how it's there, but I would think it's the same. I see it here. The youth, when they see hypocrisy, and they see infighting between rabbis, rabbonim, shluchim, it's my territory, it's my balabos, it's my psak. They say, I don't want any part of this. That's the Jewish woke, what I just told you. The Jewish woke overall is not trans, Baruch Hashem, and Halavai never. The Jewish woke is the hypocrisy that we see in leadership. And this is hurting our youth. So we have to, even though we're not leaders and rabbanim and all that, we have to give this message, especially some of you are gaboyim shul. This has to be a message that, I get a call. Another story. I got a call from Reb Zalman's gabbai. Someone who helped Reb Zalman, Schechter. He gave him smicha as a gabbai. I'm not going to go into it whether that's traditional or not. It's not traditional. And I've been speaking to him. He's 68 years old. Fine person. I think he's a gabbai today in a conservative shul out in Pennsylvania somewhere. So he bought my book, and I thought he read most of the book. He didn't even read, only read maybe 5-10 pages, but right away he was frazzled. Oh, you're not supportive of Reb Zalman. This is deception. He sent me his smicha, and I put in his smicha. So he thought I put it in to laugh at his smicha. Because at that paragraph where I put in the clip of his smicha, I wrote that Reb Zalman gave smicha to women. I didn't say it's wrong. I didn't say it's against halacha. I didn't say it's ridiculous. I just was stating a fact. Now you decide. Everyone will decide whether that is good or bad or ridiculous, whatever. And I just wanted to show a typical smicha. I didn't have one. He happened to send it. So he's walking around and writes me in emails, like I misled him. Oh, you're using my smicha to show that Reb Zalman did something wrong. So I called him up and I said, my friend, I love you. That's not what I had in mind. If you think it's wrong or I think it's wrong or someone else, that's a private thing. Let them decide. I wanted to show just how a smicha of Reb Zalman looked. He couldn't believe it. He did believe it after we spoke. I said I had no vicious intent. Now, what's my point? We tend to judge people based on preconceptions. In other words, he knows that Reb Zalman was a Chabadnik, a Lubavitcher, then he moved away, etc. So therefore, he imagines the Chabadniks are all upset and belittle him and all that, so Rabbi Dalfin must be doing the same thing. How do you know? Did you read the book cover to cover? Did you read a real honest assessment? So all of us can make so, and I'm telling you, in speaking with it, I'm not going to tell you that he's at the end going to say that he likes what I wrote. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. But I wouldn't be surprised if he says, great research, great facts, but I still, it's like a woman, rabbi leader of the Aleph group, that's Rabbi Zalman's group out in Canada. So I sent her the manuscript because I said, maybe you make an event and I would come and present the book and talk about his life and all that. So she read the book, she read parts. She said, great writing, great information, it's great stuff. I can't do it. I said to her, why can't you have the event? He says, because I am a rabbi of Jewish renewal. And I cannot present something as someone that stands for an opposite issue on certain issues. It hurts me. It hurts me, she said, in a nice way. And I said, I understand you. And I respect you if that's the way you feel, if that's the conclusion. And she said, I'm very protective. She said it very openly. I'm very protective of Reb Zalman, his writings and his teachings and the movement. And I can't, I don't want to allow anyone to say otherwise. I said, okay, no problem. My point is, we didn't walk away as enemies. We definitely had a disagreement, but it's fine. And this is what the message of our generation is today with our own youth. That even if you are not as religious as your parents, or if you're not religious yet, and you're not interested in Yiddishkeit and Torah and mitzvahs, you have to accept them and embrace them and work with them and let them in your house, as long as they're respectful to the house and don't cause a balagan and all that. And they'll come back. I just heard another story. It's a Fabrein. I'm telling you some stories. So in the 60s, there was some Bacher in the 770 sitting. Who walks in? Zalman Schachter. When Zalman Schachter walks into 770, you have to understand, all the guys are talking. It's like him and Shleiva Karlbach. When they walked into 770, all eyes went on them. It was a phenomenon. Because everyone knew that here are these two great, talented personalities, and they were so close, and they were so involved in everything else, and then, they did whatever they did, whatever. There was an old chassid of the Rashab sitting at a table in 770, and two of the Bacharim are saying, what's going to be with Zalman? What's going to be? Look where Zalman came from. And what happened over here? What's going to be? Like Bacharim were really talking their heart out to each other. And Rabbi Simpson, was already probably 85 at the time, or 80, whatever. He was an old man, and he came from a different place. He came in 1923, and he became a Rav in Borough Park, the Lubavitcher Shul. I had my Bar Mitzvah there. So Rabbi Simpson says to the young, 18, 19, 20-year-old guys, he says, don't worry. I said it in Yiddish, said, all right, Evet zurückkommen. He will come back. He will come back. And Bashgoche Protis, yesterday, someone sent me a picture of his classmate in yeshiva in 1942, Rabbi Edelman. Rabbi Edelman of Springfield, Massachusetts, right? Was a very close, good friend of Zalman's. Zalman, about a month before his passing, there was an event out in Connecticut or Massachusetts, and they flew him out, and he became sick, and he was hospitalized at one of the hospitals there. And Edelman heard about it, and he was nearby, so he came to visit. And someone sent me a picture. I have the picture. If I would have had it before the book was printed, I would have put it in. It's such a beautiful picture. Zalman's laying in a hospital bed with a big black yarmulke, not a knitted yarmulke, a real Lubavitcher Hasidic yarmulke, a big one. And his beard is like, you can see his beard, full beard. He looks like he came out of 770. He looks and feels to me in that picture like a big chassid. And him and Edelman are holding hands, shaking, like with love. Rabbi Edelman's dressed with his jacket and his black hat, and he's sitting there in a chair, and Zalman's laying in the bed and shaking and looking at Edelman. I knew Rabbi Edelman. Rabbi Edelman could have easily said, hey, Zalman, you went off the wall, you did your LSD, you did all, I can't have a relationship. He kept a relationship with him. Disagreed with him on many things. But the bond of love and friendship stayed till the last day. And this is a lesson with our kids and grandkids and people who go what they call off the derech or choose other paths. Remember the kesher nafshi, the soul connection. The kesher nafshi is what's important. Whether they'll come back the way you want them to or they won't come back, don't play God. Let the Eibishter do his job. If you provide the right environment, Like Rabbi Simpson said, they will come back. What I'm saying is what Rabbi Simpson said in 1965 and 770. And looking at this picture in 2014, 3 weeks, 4 weeks before Zalman passed away, you look at Zalman then, it's what Simpson said. He came back. And as I told you, what does he write on his own tombstone? He wrote his own tombstone. Harav Atomim. He's a Tomim. You know who writes a Tomim? Only someone who learned in Tomchei Tmimim, the name of the Lubavitcher yeshivas. If you didn't learn in Tomchei Tmimim, you don't write Tomim. Why would Zalman Schachter, at almost age 90, who writes his own, script for his tombstone, begin, Harav, I can understand. He was a rabbi, and he was proud of his smicha. But Hatomim? That's right, because that's who he was. He was a Tomim, and it's the first 2 words on the tombstone. What says later about his work and how he loved everyone and did, it's all true. But the first thing is Atomim, and he wanted people to know that. And that's why he chose to put it as the second word on that tombstone. So that's possible when you maintain a connection and when you work with it. Are there issues and issues that you could disagree with? Absolutely. And I think that's a very important lesson. If we walk away from this Farbrengen on Gimel Tammuz with a achlota, a resolution, that we find more and new ways to build relationships, to increase Avas Yisrael between Chassidim and Litvaks and Sfardim and all that nonsense, pure nonsense. Maybe once upon a time it was more real. It's finished. Right now we're Mashiach oriented. We need Mashiach. Klal Yisrael needs Mashiach. If there's a Jew that says it doesn't need Mashiach today, it's a problem. Every normal Jew, especially a frum Jew, knows that Ein lanu ela Mashiach tzedkeinu. The only thing we can rely on for peace in Eretz Yisrael. If anyone thinks that there's going to be peace before Mashiach comes, I don't know, tell me if I'm wrong, but my opinion is it's ridiculous. It's not going to happen. Mashiach will bring the peace. Maybe in 67, if Eretz Yisrael would have done what they should have at that time, taking control of the land, all parts of the land, there would be less, but there still would be fighting. So even if they were, all the Arabs and the Palestinians would be outside, and they would still be upset. It's natural. They want a homeland. They want the land. Mashiach. And the Rebbe made this a mainstay in his call. So together with his brilliance, together with his knowledge of Gemara, Hasidus, Kabbalah, Jewish philosophy, and Avos Yisrael, his drive and call of the hour was Mashiach. And it's clear that all kinds of other groups, not Lubavitch, today have put Mashiach on their agenda because that's the last solution for us. So L'chaim, the Rebbe should help that the Neshama of our Rebbe, Ben Rebbe Levi Yitzchok, should have an aliyah. Mashiach should come ASAP, Tchias HaMesim, with all Klal Yisrael and all Tzaddikim, our parents and grandparents and friends, and we should continue doing only good things for the Eibishter. And Taka, every one of us are soldiers in the Rebbe's army, and we have a mission, and we need to continue with our mission. And each of us in your work, Hillel in your work, Avram in your work, Moshe in your work, and everyone else, and I in my work, when we have that objective, Mashiach, then you won't stop, because Mashiach is not here yet. So what did I do today to bring Mashiach? What am I going to do tomorrow to bring Mashiach? You know what I'm saying? That has to be the drive. And this way, we will ultimately see, because we believe, well, Hashem promised us, and we say in the Ani Mamin, those that say the Ani Mamin, or learn the Ani Mamin, or believe in the Yud Gimel Ikrim, B'bias HaMashiach. Right? That's one of the 13 principles, B'bias HaMashiach. You don't have to be a Lubavitcher or a Chassid for that. It's Klal Yisrael, B'bias HaMashiach. So let's get real. Let's bring Mashiach. Let's do whatever we can. We got to keep on going. And not to say, well, the Lubavitcher Rebbe couldn't bring Mashiach. How can I, Mr. Shmegegi, Mr. Little Guy, how can I bring Mashiach? The Rebbe answered that question too. He said, it's nanas al gabi anok. It's like a midget on top of a giant who can see further. We're resting on the shoulders of our parents and grandparents, ancestors, and the Rebbes and Tzaddikim. We're the little guys. We're the midgets. We're on al gabi anok, and we see, and we have the ability to reach much further because we're standing on the shoulders of the Messiah and the tradition. Any comments, Chevretz, of Habrengen? You can also speak. Anyway, seid gesund, seid freilach. Please share some of this and anything else with your family. The Rebbe writes that. Take time on a yard side of a tzaddik. He says it about the Frierdiker Rebbe, so it applies to himself, to share what he stood for, what he believed, what he taught, with your family and with others in Eish HaKodesh, in wherever. Yeah. It's a vert. You don't have to make a whole drasha and a sermon and a farbrengen. I mean, if you could do that, that's great. But you know, a few people stand you around. You say, today's Lubavitcher Rebbe's yard site. You say a vert, you say a feeling, and Okay, Chevra, okay, Monday at this point, there won't be a shir because I'm coming back from Boulder. If I arrive at the time I'm supposed to arrive and I make it back to the house, I'll let you know and we'll have a shir. But as of now, I don't want to take the chance. Yes, Moshe.
What's happening in Boulder?
I'm speaking, Zalman's yard site is this Shabbos, Zalman Schechter. And they're making an event there, and I was asked to be the guest speaker. So I'm flying in just for the day, going to Barnes & Noble to do a little book event, and then over to the JCC, and then to the Beis Menachem. I really hope we could build bridges, and the Jewish Renewal community, one of the rabbis there, she can't be there herself, but she wanted the event very much. Her name is Tirza Firestone, Rabbi Tirza Firestone, and she pushed the Chabad rabbis there to make the event, and that's an excellent thing. It's an excellent thing, and I hope to present, my research, and I hope the message will get out to the other Jewish renewal communities all over that we are not the enemy, and I'm not the enemy, and Lubavitch is not the enemy, and we're here to build bridges, So that's the event.
Beautiful. Okay. Should have bracha v'atzlacha
Oh, man.
in Boulder. And Boulder is one of the most beautiful places in the world.
I know.
Enjoy.
I was there once before. What did you spend, Hillel? Did you spend time there?
No, not really. I was only once a handful of times there.
Uh-huh.
I once got snowed in there.
Uh-huh. Yeah, Moshe, you wanted to say something?
It's amazing. That's that is what you just shared with us now.
Yeah. But you should know it wasn't easy. It took a lot of negotiating and it took a lot of heat. I don't want to go into all the details, but Baruch Hashem, when the Jewish and rural rabbi, when she said she wants the event to happen, in other words, the JCC wants peace. They're not, they're not a shul. They're not they want peace, right? So if someone brings up an issue, well, how can you have a Chabad speaking about Reb Zalman if Chabad was against Zalman? Things like that. So and she said Reb Zalman would want it. Reb Zalman encouraged dialogue, and he gave Rabbi Dalfin an interview 2010. That was one of the best interviews ever for 2 hours. So I want the event, she says, to happen. So that
Good on her.
Good on her, 100%. 100%. She comes from an Orthodox background, but it makes no difference. She's been practicing, Jewish renewal and all that, and she was a leader. I think she's written about it. And, it didn't hurt that she has a great relationship with the Chabad Rebbetzin. Great relationship, And then there's also a teacher there, Morris Yehudis Fishman, who is a Chabadnik, but she doesn't show it, and she wears a sheitel, and she's 80 years old, and she's a fantastic teacher. Men and women, she's been there for years. There was a point where, she asked me about someone, and she would have to move to Boston, and she said, I can't do it. I have students here in Boulder. They depend on my teaching. So she had yichidus with the Rebbe and many discussions, very bright, knowledgeable. So she's definitely behind it. So but it took work. So that supports everything I said, Moshe and Avram, that when you work together and you use your head, and you sit back and let's see how it can work it out. This could work, this can't work, and you can get somewhere. Okay, Chevra, have a great Shabbos, everyone, and the schus of the Balei Lula will bring everyone only brachas. Write into the Rebbe online. You can write ohel.org. You can fill out the form and everything else. Okay, shalom. Bye.
Yeah.
Take care.